Welcome back to the High Performance Let's Talk Non-League podcast. Today, we have the youngest manager in the UK, Sammy Leonard-Maud. Let's hear what he had to say about high performance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the High Performance Podcast. Let's talk non-league. Today, we have the youngest manager in England, Sammy Leonard. How are you, mate?
Yes, mate. Really, really good. Thank you for getting me on. Busy, but yeah, man, all good. I'm all good. What about you?
Yeah, brilliant, mate. AJ, you're here with us today as well. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm okay, thanks. So, evening, Sam. So the first question we always ask everyone, and obviously everyone's got a different opinion of what it means, but we wanted to find out from you, what does high performance looks like to you?
That's a good question, to be fair. I mean, I think for me, high performance would be a mixture of two things. I think, firstly, of course, ability. But I think if you're hard, if hard work isn't put in alongside that, I think you're in trouble. So I think it's probably a mixture of both. I think if you're at it in terms of you work hard, you're disciplined, you get to places on time, and also you've got the ability to back it up. That's what I would say is high performance. We both manage, we both around a lot of players, and I think it's fair to say some lads are really talented but don't have the hard work to go with it. And then you also have the flip where you have a really hard working player who you love and you adore, but he hasn't quite got it. So I feel like when you've got both, I think that makes a massive difference. And that's what I would say probably high performance is.
So if I say to you, obviously you've come from playing football into the agent life, now you've gone into the football manager life. What would you say your core values are for a football team?
Core values, probably firstly discipline. I'd like to think sort of coming in, obviously we won on Saturday and obviously being the first win of the season. I think for me, the biggest thing for my lads is making sure that we have a structure, a discipline. I don't believe that you can just chuck in 11 talented players and just say, fuck it, go and play. I think you've got to be disciplined and there's got to be something to what you're doing. Other values, I would say, is aggressive, confrontational. Those are things that, I'm happy to have in my team as long as you sort of don't, go overboard. I think I like players who are sort of on the edge as long as they're not sort of doing stupid things. That represents me quite well. I'm quite intense on the touchline. And to be fair, mate, I'm not too bothered how I'm perceived as long as we win. Okay, I want to win. I'm not too bothered about fans' opinions or Twitter's opinions or anything like that. I want to win. So I think these are probably the sort of things I would sort of, identify with that, mate.
Obviously, let me ask you this. Before you got the job, no disrespect to any of the managers that's taken over before, how far away was the club away from your core value that you just talked about now?
Probably not as far as maybe first seemed. There were some good players at the club. They've probably been unfortunate in some games, to be fair, mate. I think there were, a few players away, whether that's just one player who can leave the dressing room, one player who just has a bit more than other players. So I'd probably say there were probably 3 or 4 players away of where they needed to be. I've always said, I feel like, and to be fair, mate, you'll know this as well as me, if not better, I feel like steps 4 or 5 is not a league where you can just turn up and roll teams over. You've got to be at it. If you're not, you'll get turned over. So for me, it was bringing in 3 or 4, but no, I wouldn't say they were a million miles off, to be fair, mate.
So obviously there was issues there. That's why they had to get a new manager in. So there was issues in the club. What did you do first to identify the issues, and what did you do to rectify the issues and get the 3 points last Saturday?
I think first thing you've got to do is it sounds bad, but you've got to get rid of anyone who isn't on board with what you're trying to do. Listen, we both know, right? Football and personal is very different, and sometimes people cross the two together. I believe. Listen, I've let go of some lads who, to be fair, mate, I'd love to go for a beer with them. I'd love to go clubbing with them. I'd love to go on a night out with them. Unfortunately, I wouldn't want them in my team. For me, it's about getting out players who don't quite fit into what I want, which is, like I said, disciplined, talented, and has a structure behind what they're doing. But for me, it was getting out a few of them, bringing my own in, and then coupling it with good players I've already got at the football club, which they do have. We've got some talented players who I believe can actually play higher than 4, quite substantially higher as well. But like I said, the biggest thing for me was firstly bringing in my own players who I know and trust and know me. And then secondly, making sure that we've got a plan. We know how we're going to set up. We know all of those things. I think once you've got that, you're in a great position to push on, mate.
Obviously, we all know how young you are, and the job that you've got is a massive job that a lot of experienced managers wish they've got. What was it like going into a men's change room at your age and dictating and enforcing what you want and your idea, your identity into the club, and knowing the fact that these boys are more experienced than obviously at that level, they're more experienced and they know exactly what they want as well. How did you manage to change the mindset?
I think for me, anyone who knows me personally, I've probably gone through more in my life than most 20-year-olds. I'd probably say sort of early 30s. I mean, I've had illnesses that have stopped me playing. I've had the so-called knee injury to stop my academy football. I've played abroad for 12 months. I've been in professional academies. I've played non-league football towards the upper end. I've got players and friends who are playing in the Premier League, so I feel like I've got fairly good experience, nowhere near the finished article, but I've got decent credentials for my age, I like to think. Loads to build on, but I feel like I can recruit and organise a team to want to play. One of my biggest critiques, to be fair, mate, at 12, 13 was I spoke too much in academies. I got in trouble for that a lot. I just basically was telling everyone what to do, and everyone was like, "Fucking hell, this kid doesn't shut up." I did have that a few times. So for me, I always said I wanted to be a manager as much as I wanted to be a player. And obviously, I run a sort of mentoring stuff alongside my sort of job now, and look after different players in different places. I know we've sort of spoken about that before, Adrian, in terms of players coming to you guys. But what I would say is I'm well accustomed to dealing with players at the professional game. I'm well accustomed to dealing with players at steps 4 and 5. So I think I've got a fairly good understanding. And listen, mate, players know. When you walk into the dressing room, you know if someone's a blabber quite quickly. I know I do. If I speak to a manager and I think he's talking shit, I'll know within 30 seconds. Whether that's true or not, I have a clear idea. And I think I'd like to think anyway, the players know that I'm not one of them. And I hope, if it hasn't already, that results will improve, performances will improve. And we are a better side than when I came in, 10 days ago, 11 days ago, whatever it is.
Well, a lot's changed in that club. Obviously, I've kept an eye on it since you've been in there, so I've actually kept my good eye on it. For me, obviously, we're speaking for about 5-6 minutes now, and I've heard about the word discipline. Where's that discipline come from? Is it from family members? Is it from yourself? Where's that discipline come from?
Probably rejection, to be fair, mate. I think it'd be easy to point to people, and obviously your family is definitely a help in that, and people I've dealt with. But I think probably rejection, mate. I remember getting released from Northampton's academy at 14, and I couldn't believe it. I thought I was the best player at the academy. And probably that idea of ultimately, it doesn't matter how good you are, if you don't have the basic credentials of you won't work hard, you've got no discipline, you don't say your please and thank yous, you're not organised, you don't get proper sleep, you don't eat right. If none of those things are in place, but you're a little bit good at football and you've got a bit, you're always going to fall short. I believe that not just in football, but in life. And I feel like if you put all the things together, ultimately you're going to do better. And if you've got a talent on top of that, and then you can add those things, mate, you can go all the way. I said to BBC, ITV, whoever I've spoken to, I believe that I will manage in the Premier League. I was never going to play in the Premier League. I was never going to play in the Championship. I wasn't that good. I'm not stupid. I'm not one of those guys who's just saying things just for the sake of it. I believe, having dealt with managers in the Conference, League Two, head of academies in the Premier League, Championship, I don't think there's much that those guys have got that I can't do from a managerial perspective. I do believe that. I'm happy to say that. And as a player, I knew that if I wasn't at it, I'd be rolled over because I was good, but I wasn't amazing. I wasn't someone who was going to light up the pitch. I was an organizer and would give you a 7 out of 10. That's what I was. I was never going to be able to get the ball, go past 4 players and stick it in the top corner like some players can. So I knew my limitations, but from a managerial perspective, I feel like if you're switched on, you do the basics, and ultimately you trust your gut and you forget what everyone else is saying, mate, you'll do well. I do believe that. My company hasn't just formed because I've just sort of woken up one day and thought, fuck it, I'm going to get a few footballers together and get them a few moves. No, that was months of planning, phone call after phone call after phone call. We know as managers, right, your phone goes off constantly. It's like a full-time job in a part-time environment. So It's difficult. You have to be organised. And if you're not, mate, it's just a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare, I think. So that's probably what I'd say to that, mate.
Yeah, we've had managers from our level going to Premiership. Obviously, we've got managers in our level that's gone League One, League Two. So it's something that you can do. But for me, what makes you believe in yourself so much?
First, I don't think anyone else is doing it at my age. That's a fact. They're not. So I think you've got to look at your peers, where people are at. I was 19, and if I was saying to people I can play in the Premier League, then you could turn around and say, well, Bukayo Saka, he's played 85 times in the Premier League. He's way ahead of you. Whereas I look at my position now and I go, I think the closest to me is about 26, 27, around the same level. That's 7 years. If I was to manage every single season from now, I'll go and manage 300, 400 games by 26. So for me, and that's still unbelievably young, I think. So for me, I think you learn on the job. And listen, mate, I'm sure we'll get smashed. We'll get smashed in a couple of weeks and people will say I'm the worst manager in the world. But I tell you what, we will win again. And everyone will say I'm the best thing that anyone's ever seen. So I feel like you just, you roll with the punches a little bit. Take it game by game and try and not look too far ahead. But listen, I say to my players all the time, I believe that if I do well, I'll take some of those players with me because there's some amazing players who've got the football club who I think will push on. I am confident in that.
That's good. So as the new gaffer, young gaffer, the youngest gaffer in England, what are your non-negotiable for any young manager trying to go into what you're doing now? Because obviously you've inspired a lot of managers that wants to do it now.
I think non-negotiables, mate, are, like I said, we spoke about before, discipline is massive. And that's not just, the basics, like I said, your please and thank yous. That's just all across the board. How much are you sleeping? Are you getting back to calls? Are you following your word? Are you doing the research on the teams you're playing against? Because I've been in dressing rooms where I've been given information by managers and, I'm not looking to slag off managers, but I've been in dressing rooms where managers just said, come on, lads, work hard and go out and play. At step 4, I've played in that position at 17, 18. And mate, that's a nonsense. They've got no idea how the other team is setting up, who's their best player, what are their set piece routines. If you organise and you get the things in place, I don't think there's that many intelligent people in non-league. So if you've got half a brain, you'll do okay. If you do the basics, mate, you'll always be fine. And like I said, I'm not too bothered about people's opinions or some people don't support it. For me, I'm all about winning Saturday, winning Tuesday, winning Saturday, winning Tuesday. Because if you win, people say good things, right? So, for me, before we won on Saturday, I was taking a huge amount of stick. We win, all of a sudden, everyone wants to be a mate again, So I know that football does that. I'm fully aware of that.
So, attitude or talent?
Attitude, 100%. 100%. Not even a thought. I think talent's a bonus. If you've got talent, I feel like it takes you to a certain point. And it sounds cliche, but you're never going to make it pro. You're never going to have the career you want in life or football without attitude. I just don't think it's possible. There's only very few who I know who have made a career out of being quite a good player. I think you've got to have attitude, mate. You've got to have the right mindset. You've got to be doing the right things. And ultimately, if you sacrifice, the rewards will come. I do believe that. But yeah, mate, I would say attitude 1,000,000%.
So if you're looking for a player and you found a guy with absolutely great attitude, but is not as good as your star boy, but your star boy's got a worse attitude, how long would you give the guy with the right attitude before you actually cut him off? Because like you said, it's a result business at the end of the day. We need to get results. And attitude don't win you games all the time. So how long would you give him before you actually say, no, this is enough?
I think for me, I would try and pull the player immediately and have a conversation with him and say, listen, you're a seriously talented lad. You're wasting your career here, mate. Because if you work a bit harder and if you sacrifice a bit more, you've got a top player in there. So for me, I would try and nip it in the bud ASAP. If the player doesn't listen and the player doesn't follow suit, I would get rid immediately. For me, if you don't buy into what the club's about, what we're doing, your attitude's not on point. I'm not too bothered how talented you are. You're out the door for me.
What gaffers do you look up to in non-league and in a professional game?
That's a good one. Professional game, Guardiola, bro, 100%. Guardiola's
and why?
Guy, man. I feel like he's a very intelligent person. Outside the pitch, I reckon you could go, you can go for a beer with him or, go for a glass of wine with him. And I reckon you'd just be in awe with everything he says. I feel like Guardiola's up there. I think his organisation's good. I think he's intense. I think he's the 12th man for Man City. From a non-league perspective, it's tough, mate, because I'll be honest, there's some good non-league managers. Whether I look up to them and I look at them as the holy grail, probably not. I have higher ambitions than that. That's not a disservice on non-league managers at all, because there's some managers who are brilliant, and I work with, with my company who are brilliant. But I feel like look up would be a strong word. I think you take different bits from them. I've not met any non-league manager where I go, wow, I want to be that. not yet. And whether I will, I don't know. However, I've also spoken to different people, and you might take a chunk here, a chunk there, a chunk here, and you try and take a little bit from everyone. But listen, there are some superb managers. I mean, someone I know well, the Boreham Woods manager, Luke Garrard, he did an amazing job on the National League for them. And he's someone who I think is a winner and will probably manage in the Football League, but he's one. Then at the same time, there's things I would do maybe different to him, so I feel like you try and take chunks from everyone and then sort of come to a conclusion from there, mate.
What do you do to develop yourself and your knowledge outside football?
I think, again, take things from people doing more than you. I don't try and take advice from anyone doing less than me. That sounds maybe a bit arrogant and whatever. For me, I feel like if you're not quite where I'm at in terms of, I'm happy to say this, whether it be financially, whether it be, your family life, your friends, whatever it is, I try and look to people who are just doing more. And if they're in a position where I feel like I'd love to get there, I'd love to be like that, I'm just trying to almost be like a sponge, mate, take everything in. Like I said, I feel like you should always try and take stuff from people who are doing more than you, more talented, have achieved more, maybe older than you as well. I've also got to look at the fact that I'm younger and I'm not going to know it all. I might know quite a bit from my age, but there's going to be people who are, whether it's 35, 40, who will know loads of things that I don't know. So I feel like you just try and take as much as you possibly can. And like I said, if someone's doing less than you, to be honest, mate, it goes out, goes through one ear and goes out the other. For me, it's about looking at people who I want to get there. That's my next target. I've got, what's he doing that I'm not doing? And trying to get there in as short as time possible. I don't want to be sitting here in 10 years managing in step 3. I don't. I'll make that quite clear. If that's happened with where I'm at now in terms of managing in step 4 at 20, for me, I would have failed. So I want to be in a position where I'm looking back and going, I had that, and every single time I pushed on, I looked at the next person. So I feel like you try and constantly, become a sponge to anyone doing more than you, whether that be in life, football, whatever really, and try and sort of go from there.
Before Fisher trains for me, there's a rugby team that comes on, and I normally sit there and just watch what they're doing differently to what football does. And to be honest, I've taken a little bit of chunks out of what they do in rugby. What do you do? Do you watch any other sports to get ideas of them?
Honestly, no. But again, even you just saying that, it's probably opened my mind up to something that I'm not currently doing. So that's an example for me where I'll be like, today I've taken something and I've gone, you know what, that might be quite a good idea. Whether it's rugby, whether it's athletics, whatever it is, golf even, whatever it is, maybe there's something there that I can incorporate into my own team and myself. So again, for me, it's about just becoming a sponge to people who are doing well themselves, So, I mean, I personally don't right now, but does that mean I won't going forward? Definitely not. I'll definitely look at it and try and sort of develop as much as I can,
Yeah. So what is your target for the end of for this season anyway?
I've been asked that a lot, to be fair, mate. Listen, everyone wants you to stay up. Listen, I've taken a team that's got 1 point, 17 points adrift. It's pretty much an impossible task. For me, as cliche as it sounds, as boring as it sounds, and you won't get any clickbait, is take it game by game. It is genuinely to do that. Games got called off today. We've got a cup semi-final on Tuesday. That's a massive match for the football club. That's a chance to get into a final. So for me, it's about game by game. And step 4 is a good level, man. Like, as soon as you start looking 4 or 5 games ahead, mate, we'll get turned over. We will get turned over. So for me, it's full focus on Tuesday versus Eton Socom, and then full focus at home next Saturday against Daventry, which will be, a massive game because they're the sort of, I think they're 1 or 2 places above us. So for us, it's about, can we get as close as we can? So they start looking at, with 10 games to go, all of a sudden they're looking behind us because we picked up 7 points in 4 games after being on basically nothing. So for me, it's about, listen, full focus on Tuesday, and everything else is sort of haven't even thought about, to be honest, mate.
Thank you so much for coming on today. We've learned a lot from you, and obviously, again, as the youngest manager in England right now, it's just something anyone else can do. Honestly, like all the young guys out there, if you want to take on management, Sam is a prime example of hard work. If you work hard, you'll be able to get wherever you want. So well done for that, and thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, no stress. Anytime I feel like this sort of stuff really helps people. You know, the amount of podcasts I've listened to since I was 14 is unbelievable, you know. So the more stuff you listen to, and like I said, the more things you can take on from other people, the further you'll go, man. 100%.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sammy.